Hello, I'm Merrick Masters, and welcome to Federal Sector Trump 47 Watch. Today's episode deals with the issue of President Trump's initiatives to restrict the rights of federal employee unions and also to terminate in various ways federal employees. Our guest today is Jefferson Friday, who has had a long career in the federal sector. He's worked for the National Treasury Employees Union as a national counsel and as director of the organizing department. And he has also been general counsel of the National Federation of Federal Employees, and now he is the senior counsel. Jeff, thanks for joining us today, and I look forward to talking with you.
Thanks for having me.
I'd like to ask you a little bit about your role that you currently play as senior counsel with the National Federation of Federal Employees.
Okay, so we have a small legal staff at NEFI, and I was the general counsel since 2016, and then the beginning of this year, I went part-time, and so I became senior counsel. Is meant to be, sort of an emeritus type position, but I've been telling folks, it's like the old airport movie. I picked a bad week to go part-time, right? With all the stuff that's been going on. So I'm actually having trouble holding it to full-time, really. So we have to deal with everything, every issue, the legal issue for our members. And so that can be from like an arbitration for an individual person, working with the NEFI staff on bargaining issues and FLRA stuff, elections, and then also filing suits, against the government. And we did that in Trump 1, and we're doing it again in Trump 2.
Well, as you know, through the ad hoc Department on Government Efficiency, Elon Musk's initiatives, et cetera, President Trump has indicated that he wants to significantly downsize the footprint of government, and that includes employees and also, I think, real estate, as well as the regulatory apparatus. Trump has issued executive orders terminating and memoranda directly and also through his agents in the government to terminate a significant number of probationary employees and also to require that agencies adopt reduction in force plans, which I believe they owed to the Office of Personnel Management just a couple of weeks ago and will be unveiled at some point in time in the near future. Tell us a little bit about how that has impacted the federal workforce and your union.
Yeah, so very quickly, within a couple of days of President Trump being inaugurated, a number of these executive orders came out. I mean, I guess the first major issue was the establishment of the deferred resignation program, where every single federal employee pretty much got an email saying, do you want to resign from your job? And they put the people on administrative leave through September 30th. And so, from that act, it created a lot of fear amongst federal employees, which, continues and is increased by the subsequent actions that they've taken, which including the firing of probationary employees, the plans to, downsize the federal government by, different estimates of like 20 to 50%, or some agencies are, the word on the street is that they plan to reduce their staff by 70%, as high as 70%, which is what I heard at OPM was the plan for there. So, I live in the Washington, D.C. area. A lot of people were fired that were probationary employees. I mean, those people all have families. you know, it's just, widespread through the fear is kind of palpable through um, the federal community, and 85% or something like that of federal employees do not live in the Washington area. And so this same thing is going on. We represent folks in the Forest Service and, all throughout the country, and, even in rural states that supported President Trump quite strongly, those same kind of adverse effects are striking our members out there.
The Forest Service, I believe, announced that it was going to make some major layoffs or reductions. Do you know anything about that?
We just heard rumors. I mean, so we have requested all these RIF plans under Freedom of Information Act, and also as information requests under the labor statute. We haven't gotten them. I don't know that we're going to get them anytime soon. Some of it is information is leaking out. It's like rumors, but it's a very high number in the Forest Service that we're hearing rumors about. It might be like as high as 40 or 50% of the workforce that they're talking about reducing in force.
Let's segue to union rights. I know that there is a big controversy, there was during the campaign, about return to office. The charge against federal employees is that they don't work at the office. They haven't come back to work, while a lot of other workers in the private sector have had to come back to work. And Trump was going to mandate that they come back to work. And he did mandate that they develop plans to come back to work. And then he subsequently said that if collective bargaining agreements have contrary language, that language is not valid because it interferes with a management right associated with a government-wide policy. What is your position, or what has your union said about that particular statement?
So, this came up during Trump 1. I mean, under the Civil Service Reform Act, if there's a provision in there, 5 U.S.C. 7116A7, which says that if there's a conflict between an agency rule or a government-wide rule and a collective bargaining agreement, then the collective bargaining agreement language in the collective bargaining agreement controls until such time as that agreement expires. And so that what the executive order seeks to claim is not in accordance with law. And we litigated that before, and we will litigate it again. A lot of our collective bargaining agreements are very detailed in the telework arrangements and the telework rights that people have. And as people are, if they're ordered back into the office in contravention of those rights, and we're going to pursue that through either grievance or unfair labor practices, et cetera.
What does your union tell employees if they're in a situation where they have a collective bargaining agreement that says that they have remote work possibilities of whatever kind, but the current administration says of their agency, you've got to come back to work by this Friday morning, and we expect you to be in the office. Do you tell your employees that that's what you should do?
Yeah, we issue guidance to folks, basically obey and grieve, and it's kind of a basic labor law concept. If you get a direct order from your supervisor, you need to obey that, and then we look for a redress. There have been some instances of that, but where we're organized and where we have contracts, I think the government is proceeding more apace than they are. For instance, my wife works for an agency that they don't have a union. They're not allowed to have a union because of the nature of the agency. And their people were just brought back in, like you're talking about, Friday, come back in on Monday, 5 days a week. But we haven't really, they've taken longer uh, for our folks. But, it's coming.
It's okay. Um, any thoughts about what the president did or through his Secretary of Homeland Security about the union rights of employees with Transportation Security Administration? They revoked those recently.
Yeah, it's very anti-union action. It's collective bargaining rights are fundamental. It's unfortunate that over the years that the TS that we were not able to get changes legislated that um, gave the TSA employees the same kind of coverage under the labor statute that most of the other agencies have. But it shows their true colors of this is really uh, a strongly anti-union movement. It's anti-employee and anti-union. And that's like, 40,000 folks were disenfranchised, with the stroke of a pen.
Ask you a little bit about with all these attacks on jobs and on collective bargaining rights. How have workers responded to your union? Has there been an increase in demand for union representation? Are they coming to you um, in mass looking for support and answers to how to deal with these issues?
They have. I mean, it's been a problem over the years, and the federal sector is an open shop, and trying to communicate to employees the value of having a union. But these actions have demonstrated, uh, profoundly that need. And we're in contact with the other major unions in the federal sector, and everybody's been, a lot of people are joining. Many people are joining. Many people are wanting to organize. The Biden administration was the most pro-labor administration. They had task force on organizing, and but these actions by President Trump have really jump-started organizing to a level beyond what we saw in the last administration.
Well, President Trump seems very intent on expanding his executive authority in a lot of domains. And one of the primary ones is his role as a manager, if you will. And he's saying that I should have the authority to remove presidential appointees from independent agencies. I should have the authority to reclassify certain workers, to put them under a at-will type of employment arrangement, and also to manage the workforce generally, to reduce the size of the workforce, to cancel contracts, and do other things along those lines. What can your union do, really? You've got a Republican-controlled Congress. Most of the Republicans seem willing to go along, at least in this point in time, with what Trump wants to do. And I know that there's a markup hearing being held today in the House of Representatives on a bill called Presidential Management Authority, which would give the president the authority through the stroke of a pen to revoke provisions of collective bargaining agreements that he felt were unnecessary or unacceptable. What do you do to challenge this kind of direct attack on workers in terms of their job security and also on union rights?
Yeah, we have to take these fights one at a time. So you've seen a number of lawsuits filed by unions, including NEPI. The saga of the probationary employees continues. It's going to the Supreme Court, but the unions have had some success, in the lower courts with that. We're certainly asking Congress to do their job. they're really not doing it. I mean, the Democrats don't have the power to do it, and the Republicans are not, exercising any kind of a check. But there's this relative, very small margin in the House of Representatives, and so those bills you're talking about, we're hopeful that we can stop them. And then there's a winning the battle for hearts and minds. I don't think I saw some statistic that what percentage of people actually wanted to see Project 2025 implemented, and it's like a very small number, 4% or whatever. This is not what American folks voted for. They did not. Gutting the Forest Service, which deals with wildland fire, gutting the VA, which helps veterans. So we're going to fight where we can in the courts and in Congress, and keep trying to win hearts and minds. And there's a lot of discussion about what's going on in the media and on social media, and there's really almost like a spontaneous grassroots movement of everyday Americans that are appalled by what's going on. So I think that's really where the battle's ultimately got to be fought.
Yeah, I was going to say, this seems to me that this is going to be decided ultimately by public opinion. And that will come through, the midterm congressional elections, but also, how receptive the public is. And your challenge is to really get people to think about what these cuts mean to them. And when you say to people that, well, you want to cut the federal government, I think a lot of people will say that they'll cheer that and say, that's good. Federal government's got this huge debt. It's bloated. And they've created this impression that people don't work as hard and they're paid more in the federal sector. But that's the federal government is an impersonal term. But when you talk about the Forest Service, the Veterans Hospital, the Center for Disease Control, other kinds of agencies, even FEMA, when you have a disaster and they come to help, those kinds of things resonate a lot more, I think, acceptably with the public if it can be put in those terms. Is that your challenge, basically?
Yeah, and folks, we represent the largest groups, the Forest Service, wildland firefighters, and support for that. We do also represent people in the Park Service. So all of a sudden they go to the national park and the park ranger's not there to, let them in the gate. Telling those stories is very important. The VA, people do not want veterans healthcare hurt. And they're talking about cutting 80,000 positions at the VA. I mean, the system is really barely getting by as it is. That's going to destroy it. And then we also represent a lot of people in DOD who support warfighters, and people are broadly supportive of the work, that they do. So.
Well, one last thing I'd like you to comment on, if you would, is what would you say to federal workers that NEFI can do for them and why they should consider joining NEFI?
Yeah, so I speak at organizing events frequently, and like there are rights out there that you can claim for yourself, and you need them. You need them. There's a reason why they're all calling right now. It's because they're afraid of losing their jobs, and so empowerment can be had, and you just have to go through the process. And for folks that we already represent that are not members, it's kind of like in law school at res ipsa loquitur, right? You can just, you don't have to say much. They understand what's at risk all of a sudden, where many of them didn't understand before. They thought that they were, it would never happen to them or whatever. And now everybody's subject to arbitrary action, having to write Elon Musk an email of 5 things he did last week. All those things are very psychologically damaging to people.
Yeah, you got to really have a lot of trust in management before you answer a question, an inquiry like that. You don't know what the right or wrong answer is.
That's not even from your manager. It's from some, you know, email box, OPM doc, something
Yeah,
like that.
you don't know who's going to get it and who's going to make the decision. That makes it even more fearful about or uncertain about what the situation is. Well, I thank you for your time today. I appreciate your being with me. And to our audience, stay tuned. And for our next episode, in the near future, I'll be interviewing Robert Tobias, who is the former president of the National Treasury Employees Union. Thank you very much and have a good day.